Welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And today I have two friends, Emily and Jodi. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So you guys are in Canada, and I met Emily at the Need City Montreal. You had a booth there, right?
I did. That was a big moment for me when I looked up and there you were with your camera, and I was starstruck, and really just even being to Montreal, that was definitely by far the biggest fiber fest we've participated in. So this
It's a
was great.
great festival. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the variety of vendors. And there were some very well-known vendors, there were some emerging vendors. So I appreciated the mix of it all and the variety of yarn that was there. Well, before we get into the Need City and your business there, tell me a little bit about how you two met.
So I am on Pender Island, and I was raising a fiber flock of sheep, and I got to the point where the fiber was quite amazing, and I decided not to process my lambs and to offer them up for sale. And that Emily replied to an ad that I had, and we met, and the sheep have, yeah, the sheep have proven to be good stock, and we stayed in touch. And then all of a sudden we decided to, yeah, to really do something with this fiber, and so we started our fiber company, New Wave Fibre.
Well,
Yeah.
it sounds very simple, but I'm sure that was quite a journey because, like, every time I talk farmers, it's
Yeah,
basically sometimes it's almost more expensive to shear the sheep and process the fleece into yarn than to just like
sure.
treat it,
Yeah. Well,
So,
and I think the thing is too is that you're doing it for the love of your animals, because we own the animals ourselves, and the fiber is just so amazing that you want to share it. So you're definitely not doing this. I mean, it is a business. We would just like to make money so we can continue the business and feed our animals. Um, and then you start, and it's just the networking and the meeting like-minded people, and it's definitely like a lifestyle, and it's, yeah, it's just all encompassing great, but we are trying to forge ahead and make money, but it is hard. Yes.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the things that I thought, like when we started about 5 years ago, I thought, oh, wool, make it into yarn, dye it or whatever, sell it. It's boom, there's your business model, no problem. And the things that I am really just learning now, like, there was a whole bunch of learning about yarn structure. I learned how to hand spin. Jodi already hand
Mm-hmm.
spun. And we both knit, and then learning about dyeing. And then really like this year, I've kind of had breakthroughs in terms of understanding the market. Like, so we would send our wool to the mill. And for the first couple of years, we just sent it to the mill that was the closest and that had the smallest weight minimums.
right.
And we kind of got made what everyone else was getting made, um, which made sense because it was obvious, right? But that isn't necessarily what the market wants, and it turns out that most of that is a heavier weight than what a fine, like a high end knitter wants. Um, and so, and even details like what is the most efficient way to ship wool? Like if you're sending 300 pounds of raw wool, what's the best way to package it? What kind of a bag do you use, and where do you get that size box, and which shipping company do you use, and how do you, like how do you arrange all that stuff? It's just details, but it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of learning the hard way, and getting to the post office and then finding out, oh no, that box is too big. We don't, you know, and so there's really been a lot of learning. And even though I sometimes feel like, wow, I've been working so hard on this for so long, I this year I'm like doing a reset and saying, no, this is actually going to be year one. I'm going to count this as year one, even though it's year five. And it's kind of like start again in terms of my expectations, just because this whole previous part has been like just getting to kind of square one in terms of having really consistent colorways, having unique enough yarn structure that we can offer something to the market that is not just in concept, it's in fact, like the material is really great, it's really high quality. I'm really happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, being a spinner must be very helpful in this process because you understand what makes good wool, what makes good yarn, and especially like since you are both spinners and knitters, right? You know it from inside out. Tell me a little bit how that influenced the process.
Yeah, well, it really, like when you first get involved, and still a lot of people that I talk to, they really don't realize the different breeds of sheep. Like they really think that there's just one type, or
Right.
that there's two. There's like maybe a fiber sheep and maybe a meat sheep. So spinning for sure. I mean, I've been spinning maybe for 6 years, but I still consider myself a hack. Like I don't, I pretty much spin the same weight, but I like it. But yeah, definitely the fiber structure becomes very clear when you're spinning, and sometimes you fall in love with something that you didn't think you would. Like we have a breed that we're crossing, that we have crossed for quite a while, the blue-faced Leicester, the BFL. Yeah, and to spin it is just something quite amazing. But the actual animals themselves, we've struggled with because of
Struggle
their
in what way?
personality. Yeah, well, their personality. Well, I mean, our BFL line is based on our one ram that we had, and we have heard that maybe his personality was a particular type that is not the breed. But so I've personally like pretty much flushed that whole thing, the whole BFL out of my flock, because I find them too hard to on a daily basis to deal with. Like they're they just take more work. So and now I've morphed into a Romedale breed, which is they're just a kind of a heavier breed, but I like to consider them to be a grounded breed. They like to stay put. They're easy keepers, so they're just easier for me personally to deal with. And their fiber is incredibly soft. So, but it's of a shorter staple. So when you're spinning, like I don't actually love it as much spinning because it is a little bit shorter. And for me, I kind of struggle with the shorter spin. But yeah, it's soft. So it is the personality of the sheep themselves, and then the personality of the fiber. Yeah, kind of interplays. But Emily's a better spinner than I am already.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
in fact, I mean, I do, like, I've done a little bit of technical exploration, but I was just thinking this morning that really, like, I like to learn how things work, but I'm not one of those crafters who goes down a rabbit hole until I reach perfection. I just kind of go down long enough that I kind of like grasp the basics. Anyway, but I do, it has definitely made a big difference in terms of my understanding of the fiber and the way that it's processed. And so, for example, right now, I still have, like, all of my ewes are 50% blue-faced Leicester. So that part of the flock kind of moved over to my farm. Mm-hmm. And so they're all blue-faced Leicester Cotswold cross. And I have two of them also have some Romney genetics. And also, just on a note there, I'm going to interrupt myself and hopefully not go off on a tangent, but we breed crossbred sheep, which is, in the farming community, people are really into purebred and they're into registered animals. Mm. And we breed for characteristics that we like. And so we're breeding healthy animals. We're breeding animals whose personalities we like. Mm-hmm. And
the fiber.
Yeah. And the fiber. Yeah. Good fiber, good personalities, and good, like, easy keepers, good mothers. Yeah. We're not going to end up with animals that are unhealthy because they've been, inbred too much. Right. So that's where our focus is, really, mm-hmm. on the product, and the product being happy lifestyle as well as, great yarn.
Yeah.
Well, talking about all of that, how did you find yourself on the farms? Like, did you grow up at the farms? Were your parents farmers? Like, how did you learn all of that?
Yeah, well, I definitely learned by doing. I'm originally from New Zealand, but I did not grow up on a farm. But there's livestock and everything all around you. And it was actually when I moved to Canada, and I moved to the Pender in '96, everybody just assumed that I knew everything about farming and sheep. So I got a really good gig on a farm here. I was like $40 a month rent. And he had some sheep at the back of the farm, and I had some horses, and then it just kind of went on from there. I guess I find it pretty natural looking after animals, and it's definitely something that I like to do, is to look after animals. So yeah, and then just with the sheep, they just get into your system, and they are they're pretty amazing animals. And then all of a sudden you want to start making things with your favorite sheep's fleece, and then it just, yeah. So actually my first sheep that I owned myself were some lambs that somebody gave me because they couldn't handle bottle feeding them anymore. So I took them on and started bottle feeding them, and then you've got two, and then you breed them, and then all of a sudden you've got six, and then it just goes on and on. So yeah, I mean, that's, for me, just, I've always, liked farming, being around it. And now I've got like 25 sheep, which is a fairly small flock. But for one person, it's a lot, because you have to think, you have to trim every sheep's feet at least twice a year, so it does take a lot of,
Emily, how about you? Like, did you grow up to be on a farm?
No, I didn't actually. I grew up in the city. And my mom was a single mom. And so we didn't have even a backyard some of the time growing up. But I always, it's really been sort of part of our imaginary worlds, when you're growing up and you sort of thinking about yourself in the world, and the books that you read, Beatrix Potter. And I think I read lots of British children's literature, and there's all that kind of imaginary world of like being on the farm and collecting the eggs, and kind of having that lifestyle. And then from there, when I was about 10, we just rented a cottage on a farm that was actually within the city limits in Victoria. It was the last farm before that area was developed. And so I had a bit more of a taste of it there, and my mom was a big gardener. And then in my 20s, I was really interested in food and food systems, and kind of community food, like the way that we supply ourselves, and, growing it, or supply chain management, like getting it from places. And so I started a local food buying group, and I participated in several farmers markets, and I had a little wood-fired organic bakery. And it was obvious right from the start that, food comes from land, because we grow it. And so then later on, I had kids when I was young. And then once they kind of were in their teens, I went to university, got a degree, and then also realized that I'd rather be outside most of the time. And so then I started a landscaping company, and I did some years of commercial fishing. And then I just thought, well, I can do anything, which is not true.
I mean, it does sound like that. Like I'm listening to all of that, and that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, thanks. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I just thought, like, at some point I started knitting, and I got really curious about wool, and then I saw Jodi's ad, and then there just came up a possibility to move on to 10 acres on Pender Island. And so I bought 3 ewe lambs from Jodi, and one of them was already bred. And it was, it's been grueling. Like, it's been a grueling 5 years of learning things the hard way, and calling Jodi saying, like, what do I do? I think my sheep has a puffy cheek. Like, is that terrible? Do they have, do they have parasites? I don't know. And her saying, no, I think it's okay. Just check their temperature.
Yeah.
And what are these other signs? And so, yeah.
I mean, when you read the book about farm, right, and it's like you sit home and you imagine how like the little chickens are gonna be running around you and like cute stuff. I only have 2 cats at home, and let me tell you, it's not all snuggles and purrs.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like a lot of care that goes into caring for animal. Like, what was the most surprising, unexpected sort of lesson for you starting a farm?
Yeah, well, I have been asked this question, and for me, it's to not assume that other people are into what you're into, and there's and learning that it doesn't come naturally to for some people, and there are no mistakes if you learn from it. So for me, some of the things that I've learned the hard way is relying on other people and just assuming that they have like a natural tendency to know what's going on. Like a prime example was I had somebody feed for me because I was going out, and they came back in and said, oh, this ewe didn't come in to feed. I guess she wasn't hungry. And I'm like, no, if she doesn't come in to feed, there's something wrong. So I went up and checked, and she'd prolapse, and then I eventually had to put her down, right? So it's something very simple like that people, they don't realize that there can be serious consequences from just a little something. And so I've been on this farm and been, doing sheep full time for about 14 years. So, I've learned a lot, but I've learned, a lot the hard way. I haven't had too many tragic deaths, but it's a huge learning curve. And every year I learn something. But the main thing I've found, if you have healthy ewes, although it sounds simple enough, but you have to cull, because if a ewe's not healthy in some way, it'll come out, especially in lambing,
right?
And then there can be serious consequences. So I keep my ewes healthy, and I have a real personal relationship with them, so that I know if there's something not right. And I find that that's a big step to lambing, easy lambing and healthy lambs. So therefore, happy farmer. Yeah.
How about you, Emily? Like, were there any surprising lessons that you didn't expect to learn from farming?
Well, I guess I can think of 2 things off the top of my head. One is that really overstocking is never worth it. So I caretake, I'm very lucky to caretake a large property on Thetis, and it is quite a large property, but it only has about 10 or 12 acres of grazable pasture. And so I have to keep my stock levels just below what that pasture can actually handle, because a pasture isn't just a place that sheep live, it's where they eat, and it's where they make their beds and they poop. And so from everything from kind of parasite control to making sure that you're not, you don't have hungry sheep who are then compacting the ground or who are eating the bark off the trees, because we live in a forested area. So some of my pasture has some trees in it as well. And
putting pressure on the fences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If
Yeah.
sheep are hungry, they break out
Yeah.
and it's awful. And you're like upset all the time and having to disrupt your plans.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. And you also have to buy a lot more feed. And where we live, like, I mean, this past winter, I kept 7 sheep over the winter, 5 pregnant ewes, a wether, and a ram. And I was feeding about $30 a day.
Wow.
That's what it costs to feed those sheep for a few months anyway, 3 or 4 months over the winter. It's $20 a bale for hay right now where we live, for good hay, good quality hay, which is what I buy. And so yeah, so having more sheep wouldn't necessarily, like, I don't make money off the sheep. So I sell freezer lambs, and the yarn company buys raw wool from us, but it it buys it in the form of yarn. I have to say we're both getting paid in yarn at this point. But not keeping too many sheep is really vital. And then the other thing, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say, is that there are jobs that you don't want to do. Like, in the next month, I have hundreds of hours of line trimming thistles. That's like a weed eater. I'm going to be outside. I'm allergic to grass. So I'm going to be, I'm going to have antihistamines, and I'm going to have goggles and a face mask and all those things. And I have so many thistles to manage. And then also keeping the grass trimmed underneath our electric fences. I don't want to. It's not my favorite thing to do. It's loud, it's dusty, it's hot, it's prickly, but I just have to do it. So, and same with like cleaning the barn in the middle of winter when all the sheep are inside and it gets really stinky. And I just have to go in every single day and clean it out. I finally got to that point that I just accept this and I don't rationalize and I don't put it off. And it's part of my practice of caring for these animals. So yeah, just doing the hard stuff right away. As soon as I know it, okay, do it.
Well, when you talk about the animals and you talk about how you get to know them and you get to know their behavior and you sort of like can predict that something is off just by the way they behave,
Yeah.
do you see them as like members of your family? Do you know each one of them? Like,
Oh yeah. Oh no, for sure. Yeah. Like, obviously I still know their animals, but like as part of the dealing with the sheep, we use the alphabet to name them. Like every year gets a letter of the alphabet, so I know exactly how old everybody is. So yeah, and yeah, so all my sheep have names, or Emily's have names. We know exactly how old they are. We know who their sisters are, and we know who their mums are and their grandmothers. And the other thing that is quite interesting in that vein is use that lamb together. So they'll be, when they lamb together, they'll be possibly locked up together, or they'll be let out in a small pen together for the first few days with the lambs. And those ewes then like usually hang out all summer together because they've just gone through the lambing process together, and then their lambs are friends. And then if by chance I keep those lambs, like they stay buddies their whole lives. Like now my 2 oldest sheep are 12 and they're twin sisters. And I breed them until their 9th year, and then I retire them. So they've been retired now for 3 years, but they hang out. They're grazing all day together, So it is.
That's pretty heavenly.
Yeah, I mean it's great. So yeah, and I only had the one daughter, so.
Lots of extra sheep.
Do you think like it's the same with you guys? Like, because you are going through all of this together, does that make you lifelong friends now?
Oh, well, for sure. I mean, we wouldn't have done it. I don't think we would have done it if we didn't get on so well. We were just talking last night how when Emily came to look at the sheep for the first time, we'd just talk where we met over like the ad, and then we talked on the phone. And then I went to the ferry terminal to pick her up, and then I realized I didn't I didn't actually know what she looked like. But she walked off the ferry, and as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, well, that would be her. Because, there's just it's just a certain feel or look that they have. And the good partnership, like especially at the beginning, like I would never have started a fiber business, even though I wanted to, and I love my sheep, because I'm just not techie enough. And like Emily was just like, oh yeah, no, we can do that. So
but again, there was some personal bravado there and overreach, because I'm actually only this techie. I just think I can do stuff.
Well, yeah, but you have, and it's been like 5 years and we're still going, and yeah,
it's coming along. I just see all the, I can see the list of things that I haven't done yet. So that's how it is.
Well, when you started looking for meals, like majority of meals want huge amount of wool to process because they're not interested in this mini little parcels. Was it difficult to find a meal that could do what you wanted? And also like start telling me a little bit about yarn designing, because I find that process fascinating.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's really exciting. Yeah, I think at the moment, like in Canada, there's less than a dozen, like in the whole country, which is it's a vast area, and there really aren't any mills operating in BC that have short enough wait times. Like there are a couple here in the province, but we use mills in Alberta and in Ontario so far, and we're considering other mills too. We're kind of like in talks with other mills. So we started with the most obvious choice, which was it's a woolen mill in Alberta, and their minimums are like, it felt huge at the time because we had to send them 50 pounds, and it was like, oh, that's so much, how can we even pack up that much? But
also because once it's washed, they say generally it loses 50% of its weight, which isn't quite true, but
it's about 40,
so we had to, because their minimum that they wanted to process was 20. So we had to send lots.
So we started with them, but then of course it turns out that we had these long wool sheep because they so blue-faced Leicester Cotswold crosses at that time is what we had, and they, their staple length is like 4 to 6 inches really, and that's not at all ideal for a woolen prep. So the difference between woolen and worsted is woolen, the fibers are all just tumbled around, and it's a very light, squishy, airy yarn, which is lovely, of course, to work with. But it's not actually ideal. Their equipment isn't fantastic for a longer fiber length. So we ended up blending it with other, shorter staple fibers, wool. And we sort of like worked with that for a little while. And then one of our friends, Martha, who has Cotswolds, was using a different mill, which is a worsted mill. And they had even bigger minimums. And they were more expensive, and they didn't have they were hard to even get in touch with. And then the guy who owned it, retired, and they sold the mill, and it wasn't even available for a couple of years, and it was just years and years of calling and trying to figure it out. And they didn't use the knitting. Knitters use weight measurements, designations fingering, sport, DK, worsted, and so on. But with this other mill, they used the worsted count system, and so and it's really hard to even figure out what that is and how to calculate. But anyway, we eventually after Googling everything for about 2 years,
he did send some. Didn't he sent samples?
Yeah, eventually when the new owner was online, and he said, okay, we've gotten through our backlog, We've tested the machinery. We're pretty confident that we can do this well. He sent me a sample, and then we got our first couple of batches milled there. And
that was like 100 pounds, though, wasn't it?
Oh, I sent 300.
300 pounds,
yeah. 300 pounds, which is, it was a lot. And it was a really big bill because at 300 pounds, it's still almost $40 a pound. I think it's $35 a pound to get it back on cones.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the shipping, plus taxes. And I had it blended with 10% alpaca, because just to kind of add a little bit of softness and halo, because with the worsted process, you can end up with quite a dense and heavy yarn.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, this sweater that Jodi is wearing is made out of that yarn. And it has a lovely halo, and it's beautifully soft, and it's quite lustrous.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's still, I think pretty much every mill run, we think, oh, we should have mentioned this. We get something back and we're like, that wasn't quite what I expected.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic, but it's not what we, we're considering. So
so there's a lot of trial and error for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel when you open that box of yarn and that this is your sheep right there?
Yes.
There's nothing quite like it.
Kind of like right up there with lambing days. I love.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
Times 10.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I have to say, there is a quaintness factor involved in our lifestyles on a really high level, because we both live on tiny islands. When I get a yarn order back, I have to go to the little tiny post office, which is at the marina, and you have to walk through the little tiny liquor store to get, up this narrow set of stairs into the post office. And, and then there's giant boxes of yarn, and I have to try to carry them out to the car before ripping them open, because
when you started, you sort of just were trying to see where it's going to take you. Was there immediate idea that you're going to be selling all that yarn, or did you think you're going to be just knitting with it?
Oh no, I definitely wanted to sell it.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, Emily definitely had she wanted to make this a business and going,
So, let's tell me about the first time you sold it. Where did you sell it? Was it the reaction of the public that you expected? How did you learn to market it?
Yeah.
Was it Vibrations?
I think it was Vibrations. Yeah. So both of our islands are a short ferry ride and a medium-sized drive to Victoria, BC, which is a really nice little city on the west coast. And there's a fabulous fiber festival there. It's tiny, compared to, Knit City, it's tiny. I think at that time we were paying $50 for our booth. And we were so excited because we sold $1,000 worth of yarn. And, it was wow. Great. Yeah.
Well, and it's just meeting all the people and people coming and being excited about your yarn, and then talking, to people. And one of the big things when we do go to fiber shows is, because we own and we live with the sheep that we're making the fiber from. So even, these little crafty fiber shows, a lot of the people in it don't actually own the sheep.
Yeah.
So
they're buying yarn.
Yeah. So say if there's 20 vendors, I would say maybe 4 max would be actual farmers that own the sheep. Mm-hmm. So that's, even though that's why we're in it, it's also a good twist. And then once people realize that, it takes on this whole, different relationship. And then often we can tell them the names of the sheep that are involved in the fiber, so it's a good connection for people as well. They really like it. I mean, I've had people walk away with the names of the sheep on the paper bags when they've bought roving, and so, it's a good connection. Yeah.
I have to say, though, I've also had the opposite experience. I live in a community that's a lot more conservative. I didn't really realize that when I moved there. And there's a little bit of a feeling of like, why would I buy your yarn that's, $30 or $32 a skein, when I could just go to Michael's and buy it for $3 or $4. And and any kind of concept of, well, it matters that is made out of plastic, and it matters that isn't, it doesn't have the material quality, as well as the environmental impact. Because I think both of us are really concerned with, the use of fossil fuels, and being able to create materials that are completely compostable, and that our sheep are raised in a rejuvenating, regenerative farming context. So it's actually, carbon is being sequestered into the soil because they are raised in this natural way. And I mean, I think that really matters. Like, I think to me, that's, doing things that make the world better is what I want to do. And so, but if you're in a place where people aren't really thinking of that, they're just thinking like, why would I make a sweater that's going to cost $200 in yarn, and then I still have to make it? Like, that's crazy. Like, and they kind of, I think there's even a feeling of, I don't know, but I think that there could be some resentment or some kind of hostility that I'm like getting ahead of myself, or there's
people just don't realize the real cost of things.
No,
right?
I mean, it's also like, I feel like we as humans lost a lot of skills that we used to, like everybody used to have. Like, we all used to know how to make our own clothes. We all used to know how to cook and how to grow our own vegetable garden and all of that. And so to me, it's almost like that survival skills, that you guys keep alive.
Sure.
For the rest of us, who don't
well, and the other thing is that people don't realize that that sweater may cost $200 to make, but it's going to last you your lifetime. Whereas you could make out of some junk yarn, and it's just going to like fall apart, and then it's going to go in the garbage.
Right. And it's also like the wool is such a wonderful material, because if I wear a t-shirt, I have to wash it right away. If I wear a wool sweater, I can
for sure
go for half a year without washing it and just
my first vest that I ever made, it was the first one that I spun the yarn, and then I knit the vest, and that was about probably 7 years ago. And so it's a work vest from the farm, and I've never washed it yet. And I wear that in the winter, and it just seems to just repel the hay. Like, I'm wearing it up to the barn. There's no hay in it. It just, the dirt just seems to fall off it. And I realized a few years ago, like, I haven't even washed it yet. I mean, it is dark brown to start, but it's amazing. So
because it has self-cleaning properties. That's how the animal looks so fresh. Well, what's your vision? Like, where do you see this business going? Because you said you don't want to grow too fast, and you have to be responsible about the amount of sheep that you have. So is there some sort of ambitious plan in your minds?
Yes. So one of my, first of all, I am a member of the Canadian Wool Collective, which has just created Canada's first wool certification program. So it's all about traceability and, kind of showing consumers that we have done due diligence. We've checked the supply. If a producer comes to us and says, we have this product that we'd like to have certified, then we look at where they got that wool from and where they had it processed. And then if we think that they're telling us the truth, we check their references and contact those suppliers and so on. And we give them their logo. And so that is a part of what I'm doing personally. And then also, I have been starting to purchase just from 2 farms mostly, other wool, so that, like, for example, I'm almost ready to process my first run of Corriedale wool. It all comes from one farm on Texada Island. And I will probably blend it with a little bit of alpaca from a farm on Salt Spring. And so, yeah, so I think that's one way. I mean, of course, I can also say I would love to have more pasture. I would love that. But I think really there's so much wool being produced already in our immediate region. There's so much of it. There's so much, I mean, that is going to waste currently, or is certainly not being brought to its highest use. And so, you know, part of what I'm doing is kind of starting to try to teach other people, like, hey, would you like to do this work? It's fun and interesting and beneficial to the world around you. Here's how you can get started doing that. You know, here's what to look for if you want to buy raw wool. Here's what to do when you're taking things to the mill. You know, here's the kind of information you need to put on yarn labels. So that's kind of a big thing. And yeah, I guess we'll see. Take it from there.
Well, when I talk to farmers, there is always this pride for their animals, but then we hear some horror stories about animals being mistreated and abused and all of that. How do you educate consumers about that? You are the good guy and you take care of your animals.
Yeah, well, I know, like on Pender, I help other farmers a lot. So we don't have a vet on Pender, but we have like a cat and dog vet. So we rely on each other a lot to help out. And in doing that, you know, we're keeping track of other people's livestock. So just, you know, the main thing is just, you know, making sure they're wormed, or, you know, putting sheep down, because a lot of farmers also don't like to put their own sheep down, which is fair enough. So I've actually, you know, taken the Canadian rifle, got my license now, so I can take care of my own sheep and then also other people's sheep. But I think it's also, once you just start talking to us, you know, I mean, we have pictures of our sheep all over the place. And yeah, for me, it's stepping in and helping other people that when I see that they need help. You know, fire is the latest thing that we're all quite worried about, like on the island, because if it did come through, but not if a fire came through, you know, there's no way we could, you know, get all our livestock. We know we could get it off the island. The only thing is because of the island I live on, it's actually 2 islands, there's a north and a south, you know, would be moving the stock, but I would just have to like basically open all my gates and then take my cats. Well, no, actually not my cats, my dogs, my horses, and just leave the farm and hope for the best. But what has happened is we've had dog attacks on the islands, which have been quite bad. And luckily for my friend, she was off island when it happened, so I was the first on the scene. And since that day, we've talked about if there was another dog attack or if there was a fire that swept through someone's farm, that somebody else would be the first person to go there. Like you wouldn't be the first person to, you know, find your livestock. You know, you'd have somebody else go and take care of that, and then you would take care of the survivors. But yeah, so I mean, I had to make the call about putting, I think, 3 of her sheep down, and I found, you know, all that I knew that were her favorite sheep in terrible situations. So we've kind of got that plan that somebody else would step in first. But yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's really hard, but.
Yeah, and I actually think that's a really good point, Irina. I'm not sure, like, I know someone, Tara Klager, who has a wool farm in Alberta, and she has certification for, I don't know, she has some kind of humane animal husbandry certification. So that's how she handles it. And I'm not sure that I have really done a good job. It's a good point that maybe I could tell that story better, or kind of display accountability to my community. Because I just assume, well, of course I'm doing it right. Of course I'm kind to my animals, but but nobody would know that. Why nobody else would assume that? So yeah, it's a good point to talk about that.
And I think people know. I think people usually can just tell by the way you talk about your sheep. Because like I interviewed these two guys from Spain, and this is the shawl made with their yarn from their goats. And you see all the pictures that they post, and it's like the goats are in the house and they have out and they sitting with the little baby goats, so it's like you can just tell how precious those animals are to them.
For sure.
So it's usually like very obvious. Well, let's talk a little bit about marketing, because it's a full-time job just to be the farmer, and then like to process all this wool and stuff, and then you have to break your head how you're going to become an Instagram influencer and like market your yarn. Tell me a little bit about that process, and like, is it comes natural to you? Like, is that in the part of like, I can do anything attitude?
Yeah, no, unfortunately. I mean, I think that I had some bravado going in and just kind of thought like, it's so beautiful. Like the farm life is so beautiful. All I'll need to do is, take some pictures of cute sheep and idyllic pastoral places, and it turns out that's actually not enough. And so I guess one thing that we're doing this year that is different is we are starting to sell wholesale to yarn shops. And it's partly just because I have had to finally recognize that what I'm doing on Instagram and, whatever else is actually not really enough. I'm not getting access to those larger markets. I'm making little tiny sales, and they're just sort of trickling in. And the people who find me really appreciate, the product and the service and the story, but it is actually too much for just the two of us. And I don't think, if somebody else wanted to, join in and get paid in yarn and they were really good at marketing, that would be fabulous. But I think that we're just on the brink of a new relationship with a really brilliant local yarn shop in Victoria called the Beehive. And they have a whole professional marketing team, and they have a storefront. And so I think my hope from that is that we will be able to increase our volume enough that, our volume of sales, our sales volume, that we can, have our backlog of fleeces processed and kind of focus more on the stuff that we're really good at. So for me, that's farming. Jodi, definitely farming. And then the yarn design and the dyeing, and then sort of have other people take it to the market. Like, we'll still go to local fiber festivals and, do what is kind of fun and easy. But really at the moment, like, I think this year we're doing 5 fiber festivals, which will amount to 7 days of sales in the entire year. So it's not enough, it's not enough.
Do you guys sell your yarn online?
Yes, we do. We have a website and we ship.
Okay, so I'm gonna put all the information about your yarn store in the description of this video. So for all of you guys who are watching this video, give them a follow, check out this yarn, buy a skein or a bunch of skeins, and tell your local yarn store to get connected with them, and maybe they can have their yarn in your local yarn store.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank both of you for being my guest today. I really enjoyed getting to know you. I hope one day maybe I'll get the chance to come and visit your farms. I would love to see your sheep. You'll check it out.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you so much, Irina. That's really
thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.